Okay, so today we're going to show you how to take the wheel off of a highball. This is virtually the same way you take it off all the bikes. Vegas, Jackpot, Hammer, Kingpin, Boardwalk, they all basically come off the same way. What you have is you have your axle nut here, and on the back you have the axle adjuster. There's one here and there's one on the other side. Now, depending on what exhaust you have on, when you take this nut off, you have to push the axle, push this through. So depending on where your exhaust is on the other side, and I'll show you in a second, your axle may or may not go through. It may hit the pipes. So if you have stock pipes, any manufactured pipe, you want to make sure of that first. If the axle's going to hit, unfortunately, you're going to have to take your exhaust pipes either off or loose quite a ways so that the axle will go out. So that's, up to you on what you got to do. But the first thing you want to do is you want to loosen this nut up. It's a 27mm nut. If you don't have 27mm, 1/1/16 works also. It's just a hair loose on there, but it works. So you're just going to loosen this up. You want to get it pretty loose. You don't have to take everything off, but get it pretty loose. And again, we're doing this on a lift table. You don't have to. A regular bike jack will work fine. You just want to get, of course, the weight off the wheel. Now, if you look in the back here, you can see you have an axle adjuster. There's one on each side. What you want to use is you want to use a 1/4-inch drive socket, like a small socket set, so that it'll go in there, okay? And the one thing that's kind of important, you want to count how many turns. So I like to start with the ratchet straight up and count how many times you loosen that up, because that's going to help you get the belt back in the right spot with the right tension. It's not exact, but it's really close. So you're going to count like that's a half a turn, that's 1 turn, 1.5, 2. And you just want to try to keep that, just enough to get it loose. You don't have to unscrew that all the way. You're going to want to come over on the other side. And we're going to do the same thing. There's a half, 1, 1.5, 2. Okay? So now what you have is your belts should be a little bit loose. Now you're going to have to play around with what works for you to get the belt loose so that you can get it off the pulley. But basically, everything's kind of loose now. So you're going to want to take your axle and you want to tap it over a little bit. Now, if your bike's older, that axle may not slide real easy. It might be hard because it'll freeze up inside there, have a little bit of rust, corrosion, that type of stuff. So you're going to take your nut off, then you have the washer, and then you have your little spacer. And if you look on the spacer, try to show you here, it has notches on it. That's to kind of help you line up the belt. I don't really use that. I go more off of how many turns I did. But the notches here corresponds with the notch on the swing arm. Now you're going to just tap that axle through. Okay, now if you look on the other side, you have basically this stock spacer, and it has the same thing on it. It has the notches so you can line it up. So you can see now what I'm talking about with the axle coming out. Okay, if your mufflers and everything were right here, that you would not be able to get that out. So you have to take the exhaust, the mufflers at least off, so you can get that out. Now some bikes you can kind of pull on this, and some you can't. So what you want to do, if you have a helper, if you take a little weight and you lift up on the wheel, see, it'll come out. But this is a fairly new bike, so it'll come out pretty easy. Okay? If it's really hard, it's either corrosion or you have the weight of the wheel hanging on that and it's making it hard. So if you lift the wheel up just a little bit, it'll take the weight off of that. Now the one thing that you're going to watch is when we pull that axle out, this axle adjuster here, you can see is loose. That'll basically fall out. Okay, it'll not really fall out, but it'll drop down. The other thing you have here is your caliper bracket. When you pull that axle out, all these things are going to kind of fall down. You also have a spacer in there. Make sure you keep the spacers on the right side so when you go to reassemble everything, you don't get confused to which side it goes on, because it does matter. So I'll go on the other side, I'll pull the axle out, and you can kind of watch what I'm talking about there. You see how that's getting a little bit more loose? Okay, so I pulled the axle out, so that's out now. And the wheel will still kind of hang in there, so you got to kind of jiggle it a little bit. And this is definitely, if you have a helper, it's a little bit easier. Now, if you come on this side, I'll kind of try to get the belt off, because the belt's what's holding us up. So you just kind of hold that wheel in the right spot and pry the belt off. Okay, there's a spacer that fell out. Okay, so we got the belt off now, and the wheel, and the caliper. There's the caliper, just comes off. You don't have to unbolt the caliper off the bracket. Everything will just come off. Your spacer, your adjuster is still in there. Here's the spacer, and you can see how they're different sizes. So what you want to do is make sure you keep them separate. You know, good way is put them in a little sandwich bag. Keep all the bolts on that side in a sandwich bag and all the bolts on this side. So now your wheel is basically loose. And just take it out. So it's not that big a job. It's actually pretty easy. If you wanted to take your wheel apart farther, you would just take the studs out right here. Your pulley will come right off. It's that easy, nothing more. Take the studs out. Sometimes they're Loctited in, so they may be hard to break loose, but that's all you do. Take the pulley or take the bolts out, and the pulley will come off. If you want to do your brake rotor, same deal. You're just going to unbolt these bolts here, and the rotor will come right off. That's all there is to taking the wheel off. A Vegas, Kingpin hammer, even though this is a skinny tire, a jackpot hammer, they're all the same way. They come apart the exact same way. So now that we showed you how to take everything off, the next one we'll do is how to put everything back together. Thanks for watching.